Today, February 15th, 2026, is International Childhood Cancer Day. In recognition of the importance of this day, Jewel Jordan Publishing welcomes you to a conversation with Peggy Timm, author of the new book, Childhood Cancer: One Family's Journey Through the Storm. Good afternoon and welcome to our conversation with author Peggy Timm. Peggy is an Iowa native and a recent retiree after spending 36 years at the University of Iowa in various departments, the last of which was the University of Iowa College of Law. And she has a new book. Her new book is entitled Childhood Cancer: One Family's Journey Through the Storm. Welcome, Peggy. Thank you, Stefana. Tell us a little bit about what happened and how you got to the point of writing this book.
Okay. It was the summer of 1983, and Alicia had some cold symptoms, which after a few appointments at pediatricians turned into a diagnosis of neuroblastoma at Mercy Hospital in Iowa City. It was typical summer. The children were home doing summer activities. Dick and I were both working, doing what people do during the summer, but the kids were involved with activities. We went into the pediatrician and they suggested that we needed a chest x-ray. One thing led to several others, and then we got the diagnosis of cancer. We did transfer from Mercy over to the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics.
What was your reaction once you got the diagnosis?
Well, we were stunned. I mean, she seemed to be a healthy, except for a cold, 20-month-old. She'd had a well baby check in the spring. She was fine. She was, had checks and knew that there wasn't anything, or thought there wasn't anything serious going on. They do think that she probably had this mass that turned malignant. Most of us are born with a mass that those cells develop. Hers did not. They turned malignant.
You characterize this as a storm in your book. Why?
I was thinking about that, Stefana. It seemed to me that every day, both at home and in the hospital, there seemed to be these ups and downs, constant roller coaster ride. But aside from that, for the 2.5 years we were in treatment, it just seemed that there was always a cloud, a darkness that we were walking through, that something was going to go wrong, something new was going to develop. It just seemed always cloudy, and stormy type weather. There were days of sunshine and bright, but
cancer,
more the concern of something happening.
Why don't you tell us? You kept a journal through all this. When did you start writing in a journal?
I think I started keeping notes probably pretty much as we were diagnosed, and just more than anything to just read back, to relive a day, to relive a conversation, to see if I was understanding what people were saying. I don't know that I would actually call it journaling, but just being able to make notes to go back and refer to. And I didn't always do a real good job of journaling because there were days that I was just overwhelmed and didn't do the journaling that I should have done for details. But most of it is pretty vivid in a mom's memory. Yeah, and I just wanted to be able, because it all happens so fast and there's so much information, I wanted to be able to go back and read, or at least have notes to remind me of what had been said by doctors and nurses and how we were going to move forward with protocol. I would say it was more for just my own reliving each and every, or lots of days.
The good thing about that, though, I would say, is that it ultimately allowed you to write the book.
Thank you.
Well, I'm
I think so.
asking.
Oh yeah, I think so. Um, and I started out just thinking this was going to be a 6 or 8 page Xerox, something that they could give newly diagnosed families in the clinics. That there wasn't a lot of information when we started. There weren't support groups 40 plus years ago. We were, I kind of felt like we were out there just going through the motions, trying to get information. Neuroblastoma was a fairly newly form of cancer. It's a childhood cancer. There wasn't much research having been done. So I was hoping to just write some notes for newly diagnosed families that could then know that they weren't in this alone. Somebody else had heard those devastating words, and that they weren't navigating this all by themselves.
Is that how you felt like you and your family were navigating it by yourselves?
Pretty much. I mean, there were things that the hospital was able to give us, but not a lot, and not much for in the sense of support. It was more medical than supportive. And I thought it was important for families to understand that somebody else had been down this road.
Tell me this, what was the most, if there were, if you could list 3 or 4 things, what were the most difficult parts of this journey for you, perhaps for you and your family?
Being away from the rest of the kids, well, I guess the diagnosis and treatment and surgeries and hoping for the best outcome possible. It was difficult with the boys because they were at ages where
How old were your sons at the time?
Tony was 9 and Andy was 5. So Tone had a better understanding of what cancer meant. Andy did not so much. So keeping the home fire burning, holding down jobs, keeping the bills paid, worrying about the boys and where they were going to be, because we were in the hospital. Alicia's protocol was in 5 days and home for 2 weeks. In the hospital 5 days and home for 2 weeks. And we did that for right at 2.5 years. So those 5 days, the boys had to be somewhere. They had to be either cared for or in the school system when it was the school year. That was difficult, knowing that they were being taken care of.
So how did you weather these storms? How were you able to overcome the things that were most worrying to you?
We had a great support system in family. We have family in the region, so we had grandpas and grandmas and aunts and uncles. We had a lot of people that stepped up to help take care of the boys. Yeah, I don't know about financially if you ever really weather something like this, but you do
What
what
do
you
you mean? What do
can.
you mean? What do you mean?
There, it's it's very, very expensive, whether it be the hospital itself, whether it's parking at the hospital to be there for treatment, whether it's not working. I didn't work much of the time that Alicia was in treatment because I was going to be at the hospital with her. So we became kind of a one income family. And so
What about
worrying,
insurance? What about insurance?
Oh, we did have good insurance through the University of Iowa. Dick and I were both employed at the UI. We had good insurance.
Now, did that take care of everything, all your costs and expenses?
No,
No.
no, because there's always deductibles, and there was a section in her protocol that we did home chemo. So we would be in the hospital 3 days and then do 2 days at home. But the insurance then didn't want to pay for the medical supplies when we were not in the hospital. So yeah,
So
we had,
even with insurance, there's a financial burden that oftentimes people don't necessarily realize.
sure, because then there's gas getting to and from the hospital, and there's parking, and there's somebody's going to have to eat something somewhere along the way. We were real good about packing. When we were going to be there for a week, we took food, so we didn't have to go to the cafeteria. But clinic days, and there's just always expenses. And then pretty soon the washer breaks down at home, or the roof is leaking, or there's expenses that come on top of hospital life.
And you talk about in your book how your community, you lived then and live now in Tipton, Iowa, which can you give us a sense of where Tipton is in relationship to, let's say, Chicago or Iowa City?
Oh,
Where
okay.
is Tipton?
Well, Tipton is about 30 miles east of Iowa City, so we were fortunate to be close to the University of Iowa. It's a small community. It's a small farming community of about 3,000 people. So, and Dick grew up in Tipton, so most everybody knows most everybody, or did 40 years ago. We were fortunate to have the community. The church and the Lutheran Aid did a fundraiser, so we could we replaced the automatic washer when we were in the middle of treatment by their fundraising. We had friends, of course, that were in the Tipton area and would step up to help with the boys if we needed them. Sometimes we'd come home from the hospital after being there 5-6 days, and through church somebody had lined up a meal to be delivered to the house. So it's a small, close-knit community, and I think that's crucial when you're in the midst of something like this.
You mentioned the boys. There's a chapter in your book that talks about siblings. Siblings of children who have been diagnosed with cancer. In Alicia's case, neuroblastoma. What did you find out about how this whole storm affected your children, your sons?
I think it
Or
made,
I'll put it differently. What did you learn something about the impact that a diagnosis like this might have on other children, the siblings in a family?
yeah, I think one is hard for them to understand what their sibling is going through. It's difficult for them to understand why we were always gone.
Did that leave you feeling guilty at some point?
Well, sure, because I couldn't be there for, maybe somebody's Cub Scout meeting or somebody's something. So yeah, you worry about the boys. I think they weathered things pretty well, but they weren't always perfect little brothers, big brothers. They pulled some naughty stunts, I think, probably to get some attention. But I think for Tony, it was more concern over his sister, knowing how serious cancer could be, because we had lost friends and family. Andrew was a little different because of his age. And I'm sure they got tired of being told to be good kids, and we'd be back in a week, and they saw Alicia getting toys or something special to go to the hospital when they were being left behind again.
Let me turn a little bit to one of the things that I think you indicated in the book helped them was the cancer camp.
Yes. And camp was really important to us. I remember when the doctors in the clinic thought Alicia should. Camp was new at this point. It was.
And tell us before you go, what do you mean by camp? What kind of camp was this? And
Oh, it was started as Amanda the Panda, and it was started for children with cancer. If they were treated in the state of Iowa or at the UIHC, they could go to this camp, and it was children that had been diagnosed between 5 and 18 could go to camp for a week. I thought Alicia was too young to go. The doctors thought she should go. It would be good for her. And she could always go home when she was tired of being there or homesick. That didn't happen. She went. Getting homesick did not happen. But it's a week when the kids can be kids. They're not sick kids. They're not kids without limbs. They're not kids without hair. They're kids, and they get to be kids together.
what kind of activities are they able to do?
Oh, they did horseback riding and fishing and archery and mudslides and dances and campfires and
The same thing kids do at any camp.
Kids camp, yeah. And then they added in the camp for siblings. And my boys both went. I think that was a really good thing for them, because then they could understand that they were siblings of a sick child, but there were other siblings of sick children as well. They did the same kinds of things. They were just kids being kids, but they knew they weren't the only ones with a sick brother or sister.
So it's kind of like what you said about, sharing what your journey was like. You want parents to know they're not alone. And in that instance with the camp, the kids realized there were others like them. Your sons realized there are other siblings who go through this same thing. We're not alone. We're not the only boys going through this.
Right, right. And they really developed some amazing friendships. And both of the boys then, when they were done being campers, were counselors and or staff. So it touched them. Dick and I and my siblings were camp cooks for 10 years. We volunteered, fed 300 kids 3 meals a day for 8 days. And that was an amazing experience. For all these years, I've said camp was the hardest I ever worked and the most rewarding thing I've ever done, because of those kids. They're happy when they're at camp. And we did oncology camp, so we had the sick kids, and there's some dietary things that go on, but just to see them there having a good time was amazing.
So one of the things that one of the wonderful things you're able to share in your book is that Alicia survived.
Absolutely.
At what point did you realize that Alicia is alive and well today? How old is she?
She's 44.
Okay, so this is 40 plus years later.
Right.
And at some point during that, did you realize, okay, my kid is going to make it, and relax?
No. And nope. And 40 plus years later, I still have not. She's had some pretty serious health issues connected to the chemo. So every time there's something, you worry. We all know that these things reoccur. That's something we live with. So no, I can't say there's a day that goes by that I don't. Well, thank God we've got her, but it's.
At some point, though, were you able to at least exhale, to take a breath and say, we've made it through a certain piece of this that I wasn't sure we'd make it through.
Yeah, probably that summer we finished her protocol. But then the first round of scans and treatment, or scans and tests, once we were done with her protocol, then it showed levels that were too high. So then we loaded up and went to Mayo. The doctors said we could go to LA or to Mayo. That's where they were doing research with neuroblastoma, and we decided Mayo was doable location wise.
It was closest to Mayo in Minneapolis.
In Rochester, Minnesota. Yeah, so we could.
I knew it was Minnesota.
So yeah, we could get there, and we did days worth of testing, and they didn't find anything that should be of concern. So then we went home, and then in 6 months, you do the same thing, and we did that for several years. So yeah, you can relax after an appointment, but then it's time to go back, and then you just kind of don't know.
What was your overall experience with the medical profession while you all in this what, almost 2 years that you were in, that she was in her protocol, right?
Yeah, 2.5, almost 2.5, because there were some delays, but really all in all, very positive. Of course, you're going to run into some bumps. You're going to run into somebody that you don't agree with personally, probably. But the HEMOC team was exceptional.
What is the HEMOC team? What is
hematology oncology docs? There were 5 docs that were the team. And then, of course, there's nurses that are exceptional. We've remained friends with several of Alicia's nurses. When they could come to her wedding a few years back, it was pretty incredible that they got her through treatment or were with us during treatment. I just can't say enough good things about personnel. We ran into some issues with scheduling and those kind of things, but I don't think that's anything you can avoid.
Did you have an opportunity to interact with other parents who were in your situation or similar situation during that time? I know you said you feel like you're alone. Were there parents there that at least you could commiserate with, you could, talk
Yes.
to and talk through issues?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And some of those families have become lifelong dear friends.
In fact, one of the families, you're one of your best friends, LaDonna, actually wrote the foreword to your book.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about LaDonna and her journey, which, as it turns out, sadly was not as successful as yours with her child.
When we checked in for day one, we'd been at Mercy. Okay, so now they're sending us to the U for treatment and more tests. And on day one, I met LaDonna, and she was there with her fairly newly diagnosed son. And it ended up that we shared a bathroom. We had private rooms, but we shared a bathroom. And LaDonna and I just instantly, we were friends, and they were in a very different, they were there with very different diagnosis of cancer, but nonetheless, we were kind of in that same boat. And we've stayed friends now for 40 plus years. We met a lot of families, and some you get closer to because you're there more repeatedly together than others, or some you just mesh with, I guess, better. But yes, we did meet a lot of neat families. And I had a couple nurses, or several different times, they'd come and say, we've got a newly diagnosed family coming in. Would you go and talk to them? And I never thought I was much of somebody to reach out and make anybody else feel better. But I had a couple moms say that, yes, that did help, just knowing that somebody else was there. And if we were in at that time, we would gather and compare what was going on. So yeah, you do meet families.
And it seems that obviously you can't talk to every parent who has a child who went through what you all are going through. It would seem that your book is kind of a way to talk to families when you can't talk to them personally, to give them some um, guidance, I would say. Was that kind of the impetus behind you deciding to write the book?
It's kind of that I'd like to pass on some information that there are people that'll help you through it. You need to find those people, but there are no right and wrongs, I think, is what I kept going back to. You've got to do your research, and you've got to try and you'll make the best educated decisions that you can make for your child and your family, and that's what you got to go with. Nobody can tell you it's wrong. I found pretty quickly not to let somebody always be questioning whether they thought what we had decided. I mean, Dick was always in on these decisions. You can't always be letting somebody tell you that you're wrong. You need to do what's right for you. There are guidelines to help you. There are people to help you, but ultimately doing what is right for you and your child. And being something else that was important to me was becoming an advocate for my daughter. Too many times in the beginning, I sat back and thought, okay, well, that's what they say we have to do. It took me a while to start questioning why we were doing that. And I wasn't questioning anybody's medical knowledge. I was just questioning why we were doing something. I needed to know why we were going through this next step. And I think that's okay.
Do you think that's an important objective for parents going through this, to ask those questions, to ask why? And if
Absolutely.
so, why is that important?
It's absolutely important. You need to be comfortable with what it is they're doing, why they're doing it. And I think, looking back, I wish I'd have started questioning those things much earlier, but I thought these are medical professionals. They're doing what they should be doing. They're telling me what I should be doing. And we did, except for one instance that I didn't do what I was told. But I think
you want to share that now, since you kind of looked guilty and a little bit. What happened?
Well, it was when we were doing chemo at home, and we'd go in, do 3 days. We could come home on Sunday. And as I'm loading up Alicia and all of her belongings to come home, an intern said, "Oh, no, we got to do a chest x-ray." And we had a discussion, which ended with him calling one of the...
Is that more like an argument?
Well, okay.
You called it a discussion. Was that an argument?
It was let's have an understanding, because he said we had to do a chest x-ray. I was saying, why do we have to? He's saying it's routine. I'm saying it hasn't been routine in all these weeks. Why would we need to do it now? And so he finally got it was Dr. Tanous on the phone, and he said, no, don't need to do it. He still insisted that we do it, or he wasn't going to sign our release papers. And so I picked up my daughter and her belongings and told him he could mail them to me if he wanted, but we were not doing a chest x-ray. So
that's also part of being an advocate for your child, right? If the doctor had said, yeah, you need to do that because
I'd have done it.
Said, okay.
Yeah, I'd have done it. But there just didn't seem to be any reason. And, we're a year and a half into this. The amount of radiation that those kids get, I just didn't think there was reason for one more.
Especially when there was no reason given to do it.
Right. So, I think we, for them, basically did and went along with everything that they told us we needed to do. They were the professionals. I still don't think it hurts to question why they're doing something. So you know why. So you better understand what it is they're
Well, in fact, it
doing.
sounds like it's.
I just think, and it's probably also my age, but I think it took me a long
What do you
time to
mean?
figure out.
What do you mean?
Well, as a young mom, I think I was just assuming that everybody was going to always do what was right, and I shouldn't question, but you can question. I think that's true. And there was one time that they were going to cut Alicia's chemo meds that we were doing at home, but I would need to pick them up at the pharmacy. Well, then when I pick them up, they haven't been cut. So things slip through. Things, somebody's going
What
to
did you
make the
do in
mistake.
that instance? What did you end up doing in that instance?
Well, we went back to the floor and found the people that needed to rewrite scripts, but it was at a point where I had really started paying attention to detail. I guess because I thought these things can happen. And so we went back to the floor and we got it straightened out. But it just brought to light that mistakes happen. Everybody's human and those things happen.
You mentioned your husband Dick earlier, and I don't want to give away everything that's in the book, but who you're still with. You guys have
Yeah.
been married how long now?
Oh, it's going on 53.
Okay, but you mentioned him in the context of, this whole ordeal, and he went through this with you as well. Were there any challenges for you as a couple? Or did you have challenges? And I don't want you to tell the specific story necessarily, because I want people to read the book. But were there challenges that you all faced, and how did you ultimately, in a general sense, how did you ultimately overcome those challenges to now be married 53 years?
I would say we had some bumpy roads. I don't think anybody can argue that they don't.
What was that brought on by? Just the stress of being
Stress, stress,
in, yeah.
stress. Yeah. And I was always at the hospital. So now, looking back, I can maybe better understand why being there and knowing everything that's happening. He was working, coming up to the hospital part-time, then going home to the boys, still mowing lawn, doing laundry, that kind of stuff. So he wasn't there as much. Now, having said that, moms are the ones that sit by children's bedsides as a rule. There are dads, but mostly it's the moms that are there. Dads don't handle these things, I think, quite as well because dads are used to being in charge and dads are used to fixing things. Dads are the fixers and they're going to make everything right. They can't with this. They have no control over this serious illnesses and treatments, and they're I think they're worried about children and they're worried about spouses and they're worried about paying the light bill.
They're worried. They're just
Yeah,
worried.
yeah. Um, so yeah, we had a few little run-ins, but we weathered it. Thank goodness. We are some of the fortunate few that weather serious illnesses. We've seen a lot of people that didn't make it through to the other
The
side.
couple broke up as a result.
Yeah, with or without their child, they didn't make through. Their marriage didn't make it through.
What's your life like today?
Well, we're both pretty much retired. We do a fair amount of volunteering. I'd say we've got a good life. I've done a little traveling, gotten to see a few things, go a few places. Our kids are doing well. They're adults. They're happy. Well, mostly happy, I'm guessing. Healthy, that's right. They have children of their own, so I think they've done okay.
Do you have any parting advice or words for parents who are in this situation? Um, and how to weather the storm that you all were able to weather?
I would say reach out to people if maybe the clinic can offer some families or guidance. Maybe picking up this book and just figuring out that you're not doing this alone, or you don't have to do it alone. Ask some questions. Grant yourself grace. There's no written rules. Grant yourself grace, because you're going to do the best you can for your child and your family. Hopefully take care of yourselves in the process.
One other thing, I remember you said at one point, it's not your fault. At one point you said you kept thinking, what did I do? You
Yeah,
know,
I did.
what, and I think parents may tend to do that. They may tend to wonder what they did, which makes the stress even greater to causes, and they didn't do anything.
Right, right. Um, they think Alicia was born with this mass. So, but my initial reaction was, she's 20 months old. What did I do carrying her? What did I eat that I shouldn't have? She hadn't eaten or had enough exposure to anything at 20 months that would cause cancer. So yeah, I was pretty hard on myself with what had I done to cause this. I had trouble carrying Alicia from the beginning. So then, I just couldn't figure out what I had done
And the
that could
reality
cause
is,
this.
you hadn't done anything, and that's
I
part
had
of
not.
giving yourselves grace, and realizing that whatever the battle is, you start from a position of just trying to work through it and not feeling like there's something you did that
Right.
created the problem.
Put one foot in front of the other, do the best you can. Um, gather up some people that are near and dear to you and can help you on any really bad given day, because you're going to have them and you're going to need some support. But take care of yourselves.
I want to show our listeners the cover of the book,
Okay.
and the book is going to be available for advanced sales beginning on today, February 15th, which was chosen because it is International Childhood Cancer Day. And so we encourage anyone who has a relationship with any child in this situation to buy the book, because I believe it will provide you with the guidance and information that some of the information that I think Peggy wants to relay to you all. You can order the book through our website, which is also we're also going to put up, um, which should appear on the screen now, along with the book cover, or through Amazon or Ingram Sparks. It will also be available in an ebook through Amazon. Thank you so much, Peggy. I appreciate it. So now, Peggy, as we wind this up, people now know how to purchase the book. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I'd like to say thank you to the people that were willing to write some information, a blurb regarding the book. The women that I reached out to, two of were Alicia's nurses, and we spent years with those women. And then they were also involved with, or Kay was involved with camp.
And they are, why don't we name them? Who are they?
Oh, Kay Schmidt was one, and Denise Holliday was. Denise was Alicia's primary nurse, and every time that we were in the hospital and Denise was working, she was assigned to us. So she was our main primary nurse when we were in for treatment. And Kay was also on the floor. She was very involved with the floor, the PEDS clinic, as well as camp. She was a camp counselor. She was a camp nurse. I just, those women really understood what this book meant and what we'd been through, and I think portray that in their blurb.
It's extraordinary that in 40 years later you're still in contact with them, which I think speaks to the nature of the kind of relationships that are developed in these kinds of crises. Obviously, this was a crisis. This is a devastating um, um, diagnosis that you received, and you had some really good people supporting you.
We did.
So yes, thank you both. And also, what do you want to say about Jacinta?
Jacinta I worked with at the University of Iowa, and she's been a long time friend as well. She is an author. Um, she had a devastating experience losing her son and husband in a horrific accident a number of years ago, but we have been longtime friends, raised farm girls, worked together at the U. We've just stayed good friends.
Do you think anything about being raised on a farm or your background and experience has helped you in this process?
That's a good question.
One we didn't prepare to talk about.
I don't know. Yeah, I think well, I think small town, farm, I think those communities are closer and that has helped. But I think I was raised, we had to work hard. We had to, there weren't Sunday swim parties, and we worked hard. So I don't know whether it made a big difference, but I would like to think so.
How do you think that impacted your life overall? The fact that you worked hard and had there were expectations of what you did as a child.
Well, and then that made expectations as an adult, and I don't think there was never a time during this that I thought could walk away from any part of it, which I think also goes to good work ethic and strong family values.
It doesn't mean you didn't want to go and hide sometimes when things got hard, but you weren't going to go anywhere in terms of uh, paying attention to what was going on with your daughter.
Right. There was more than one time that I wanted to bolt, but there was nowhere to go, and I had responsibilities with my family.
Thank you for watching, and many thanks to Peggy Timm for sharing her family's difficult journey. Beginning today, you can pre-order copies of Childhood Cancer, One Family's Journey Through the Storm by going to our website, www.jeweljordanpublishing.com. After March 1st, the book will be available on our website as well as on Amazon and Ingram. In addition, the ebook is available on Amazon. Note that this summer, Peggy will be visiting various select cities throughout the country to do book signings, share further about her book, and talk with families. Her schedule of cities she will visit will be on our website. Finally, on this International Childhood Cancer Day, remember some of Peggy's most important words. You are not alone. Blessings to all.